article about his experiences there that taught him what it was like to be part of a religious minority. This letter was actually published in a website called the World Net Daily, which, if you read my blog, I make fun of every single day. It is one of the worst far-right websites. Somehow they published this letter in 2005. He and his wife attended a local high school football game and were not at all surprised when a man came on the PA and asked everyone to rise for an invocation. They were very surprised to find out that the prayers were not Christian, but were given by a local Buddhist priest. And I want to read you what he wrote as he considered what he should do while those prayers were spoken. Quote, "To continue to stand and observe this prayer would represent a betrayal of our own faith and imply the honoring of a pagan deity that was anathema to our beliefs. To sit would be an act of extreme rudeness and disrespect in the eyes of our Japanese hosts and neighbors, who value above all other things deference and respect in their social interactions. I'm sorry to say that in the confusion of the moment we chose the easier path and elected to continue to stand in silence so as not to create a scene or ill will among those who were seated nearby. Needless to say, this was our first and last football game. Although many of the students we worked with continued to invite us to the game, we were forced to decline. We knew that if we were to attend again, we would be forced to abstain from the pregame activity, and not wanting to offend our Asiatic neighbors and colleagues, we simply refrained from attending. When placed in a setting where the majority culture proved hostile to my faith and beliefs, I became paralyzed with indecision and could not act decisively to defend and proclaim my own beliefs. I felt instantly ostracized and viewed myself as a foreigner in my own land. We often advocate the practice of Judeo-Christian rituals in America's public schools by hiding behind the excuse that they are voluntary, and any student who doesn't wish to participate can simply remain seated and silent. Oh, that this were true. But if I, as a mature adult, would be so confounded and uncomfortable when faced with the decision of observing and standing on my own religious principles, or running the risk of offending the majority crowd, I can only imagine what thoughts and confusion must run through the head of the typical child or teenager for whom pure acceptance is one of the highest ideals. I would say in love to my Christian brothers and sisters, before you yearn for the imposition of prayer and similar rituals in your public schools, you might consider attending a football game at Wahhovia High School. Because unless you're ready to endure the unwilling exposure of yourself and your children to those beliefs and practices that your own faith forswears, you have no right to insist that others sit in silence and complicity while you do the same to them." Now that's a Christian who finally got to walk a mile in the shoes of those who are treated as second-class citizens and are, in the words of Justice O'Connor, told that they are outsiders and not full members of the community. Now, I certainly don't believe that most Christians support these kinds of threats and violence I've talked about. This is a small minority that commits these acts. But what you do hear from Christians all the time is that they just don't understand why we make such a big deal out of things like nativity scenes on public property, or Ten Commandments monuments in schools, or under God in the Pledge of Allegiance. They don't understand it because they live within the comforting confines of the nation's dominant religion and are protected from the concerns of religious minorities and non-believers. They simply can't conceive of the way these things turn the rest of us into strangers in our own country and deprive us of the comforting safety of the cocoon that they are allowed to live in. That's exactly why we need to continue these fights. And one of the most important things we can do is build communities like this one, like SOMA, like the Freedom from Religion Foundation, like the Secular Student Alliance. Jessica Ahlquist told me, the first interview that I did with her, she said the very first